What's up, WBE fans? It's your friend Choice CJ here, back again for another week of Pickems with my good pal and co-host, General Tarheel. What's up, Ben?
Hey, what's good, everyone? It's great to be back and bringing you some another amazing matches to talk about for the WBE as we are getting very closer to the end of the season.
Yeah, that's right. Only 3 weeks left. It's really crazy. The playoff matchups are starting to come into play here. We're starting to see who's going to be at the very tops of the division, and there's still a couple teams in the race for these last few spots. So it's going to be very exciting to see how this turns out. We normally go into the previous week's results at this point in the show, but there's a few games still being left to be played, so we're going to put that on hold and talk about it in the next week's video. So we hope you guys understand, and we thank you guys for bearing with us. The good news is that allows us to kick straight into the Week 11 action. There are many great matchups, as Ben alluded to, and a lot of them are very important for these playoff seedings. So we're going to kick things off right away, and Ben is going to hop into our first match.
That I will, and for the first game we have the Bullet Punch Club, coached by Uzi Gunner, going against the Seattle Sea Kings and Jodor. Now, based off of last week's performance, Jodor definitely has to be aware of a set such as a Hone Claws Roost Mega Arrow, as if Uzi pays any attention to last week, Jodor did unfortunately get 6-0'd by a Workup Roost Mega Pidgeot, so fairly similar situation. I feel like it'd be a little bit easier to do with Arrow though, purely because you can get a potential Scald Burn on it and wants to attack physical with Aloe, and also you're getting super effective damage off, which is a little bit more helpful. But also you will have the, most likely have the Umbreon in this matchup, which allows you to also carry the Foul Play, which would be pretty beneficial. But with the Home Claws boost with Stone Edge and then just like boosted Aerial Ace or anything of the sort, you definitely have to be aware and respect that based off of last week, so just has to keep that in mind. Mean Shout also has a great matchup, especially if you put Life Orb on it. It kind of breaks apart Jodor's team for the majority of it. Sigilyph is kind of like the best switch into fighting, of course, but you can just run knockoff, get rid of its item, and then pivot out. It might be able to deal with the majority of the time after that, especially as like Colbur, but you could run like Rock Slide just to have at least have something else with it, and then like potentially just be High Jump Kick. If you really want to, you could just run like Drain Punch as well, I guess, knock off Rock Slide, and then SD, and you can do a lot versus the team. You could also benefit from Zen Headbutt for Venusaur, which actually is probably going to be more ideal. Other than that, you're just doing a lot of coverage for the team. It's really helpful versus Umbreon and Avalugg, of course. You just have to be aware from all the Protect potential on the Pokemon, such as Alomomola and Umbreon, to Wish Protect if you are running High Jump Kick, because it would be awful to take 50% just from a simple and obvious Protect. Tapu Fini is a great defensive check and taunt user for this matchup. Just in general, it switches into majority of the Mons, while also giving great taunt support for that Alomomola and Umbreon who want to get up the wishes and stuff like that. The terrain also helps prevent the Toxic that Umbreon or Aloe might want to try and get off. You might be able to stop a few Scald Burns from Alomola, etc. Terrain will also be able to weaken Haxorus's Outrage, which might be pretty beneficial in the long run, I feel like, because Haxorus is always a potential sweeping mon or just a very strong bandit mon in general, so being able to neutralize that threat a little bit is pretty helpful. For Jodor, I do see a setup Infernape doing a good amount of work if you have the right coverage and deal with Mega Arrow, because I really don't think when it comes down to it, you're going to have a set that can deal with Arrow. If you are a setup variant, I don't think Choice Scarf's the best because you do need a good amount of coverage, but I think that that's the right route with Infernape and setup, and you just have one way of dealing with Mega Arrow the best you can, and hopefully drop it so Infernape can win late game. Bisharp I can also actually see doing very well, especially if Uzi Gunner fails to respect Defiant and brings like a bulky Intimidate Arcanine to help with like that Infernape and stuff, then you get the boost from the Intimidate, of course, and Bisharp becomes a major threat. So there's definitely a few things on both sides, but based off of last week's performance and just the past performance that Uzi has provided, I'm going to have to go with the Bullet Punch Club this week. Everyone except it's Sock actually going in favor of the Bullet Punch Club this week, with Sock going in favor of the Seattle Sea Kings and Jodor. CJ, you want to tell me why you're going with Uzi?
Yeah, you brought up the unfortunate sweep from last week. Hopefully Joe can bounce back in future weeks. But Uzi's just been very impressive since he joined WBE. He's currently 4-1 as the coach of the team. He inherited the 0-5 record, of course, so his overall record is 4-6. But you've got to be pretty impressed with the performance that he's put in so far. So I'm picking him. I do think that the Mega Venusaur could potentially be problematic for him. He's going to have to be really smart with like the Aerodactyl and the Uxie to keep those around so he has super effective stab moves for that Mega Venusaur. The next game we'll be discussing is between the Sin City Scissors and Patty Trills, and the New York Noibats, coached by Mewtwo fan Nate. Now, I think that Nate has several good offensive win cons in this game, potentially. Cloyster is looking very problematic, just because it really only needs its stab moves to sweep with Shell Smash. Yes, it's true, you could run like some cheeky stuff like HP Grass or something for the Toad to do the most amount of damage to it, but that's not really needed. Like, Icicle Spear should still do plenty of damage. And the reason I think that you don't want to put a coverage slot in there is it gives you the ability to run Ice Shard in that last slot, which is just going to be really nice insurance for the Lando T. SD Lucario also looks pretty scary with just its stab moves and extreme speed. The only deterrent to that really is going to be the double Intimidate coming from the Lando and the Incineroar. Not that Incineroar like switches into Lucario, but it's just something to be aware of in general. Like you could kind of whittle that thing down with Intimidates or remove its boosts. And then of course Swellow, as always, just looks like it completely shreds in this matchup. Boom Burst resists are far and few between. Ferrothorn being the only option there, and that of course is hit 4 times super effectively by Heat Wave. So lots of potency there. I'll be interested to see which one Nate tries to set up for in the late game. It's looking like some pretty good offensive potential on Patty's side as well. Lando T's got a pretty nice matchup just because it outspeeds a large portion of Nate's team. Basically, like only 3 Mons, Swallow, Thundy, and Hydreigon are faster than it. So it could wall break pretty easily with like SD and Fly in EMZ and do tremendous damage to pretty much anything. Like Slowking, Dust Noir are not going to be able to be bulky enough to take like +2 Supersonic Sky Strikes and stuff like that. And if you can weaken some of those bulkier Mons like Sylveon or Go-Goat, it really paves the way for like Scarf Primeape or something like that. I think Scarf Primeape with Close Combat, Knockoff, Gunk Shot, and probably U-Turn looks really good. Just like Scarf, Close Combat's going to be really good to take out Hydreigon, Swallow, things like that. And if he's like, Scarf's Lucario or something like that, Primeape has speed stat as well, so that's really nice. As always, like Alakazam looks very good. I really like sub 3 attacks this week. I feel like I say that every week about Alakazam, but it's just really good here. The ability to run sub and not have to predict is really nice. And in this instance, I really like it because it gives you 2 chances basically to hit Focus Blast onto Hydreigon or Steelix. You don't want to have to go for Psychic as one of those bonds switches in, and then you're forced to pray and hope the Focus Blast hits. So I think that's really nice. And it also gives it some protection versus Lucario's extreme speed. So if you can somehow keep up the substitute as he switches in something on a sack, then you have up the substitute, and Lucario cannot KO through that. So I'm going to be picking Patty in this game. He's been, he's in playoff contention, looking pretty good. Nate has been in a little bit of a downward turn. Kind of just been trying to bring some fun sets. Almost worked out last week with Combine Sylveon, but didn't end up working out. So like we'll see if Nate brings his A game or not. It looks like most of the analysts and fans are kind of expecting it to go Patty's way as well, Sock being the only dissenter from the majority. Anything you'd like to add on this matchup, Ben?
I mean, you said it fine. I do love Nate, and I actually love both of these teams in general. But when it comes down to just past experience and how they've been doing so far this season, I have to go in favor of Patty Trills and Sin City Scissors. He's just been doing very well with the squad overall, and it's one of my favorite teams. So I enjoy seeing him always do well, and that's why I just had to go with him over Nate.
Yeah, I still think this is probably like one of the top 2 or 3 rosters, just in terms of how scary all the Pokemon are in the league.
Oh, so for sure. There's just so many
really
reliable
working
Pokemon
out for him. Yeah, definitely.
All right, and for the next match, we have the San Diego Chimchargers, coached by Lord MV, going up against the Chicago Cubchoo's and Galactic Elliott. For this matchup, I see Scolipede having pretty decent sweeping potential overall, especially with Ground Z, but they have to respect the potential Ditto because, of course, that not really having potential to counter sweep, I'd say, because of the variety of Pokemon the Cubchoo's have and the coverage that you need on that Scolipede for the Chimchargers and everything. But just the fact, of course, being able to KO the Scolipede after, if you do get Of course, the copy on like an SD boost or something like that. So for Scolipede, all you really need is SD and then a few coverage moves, and it can do totally fine with the sweeping. You just have to watch out for that Ditto. Victini can literally just stay in and click moves. It has great coverage for everything. All you need is like V-Create, Bolt Strike, and then Glaciate, potentially running Icy purely to get the KO on the Mega Garchomp, because that thing is extremely bulky and it's definitely need a single Glaciate if you're just like Mixed Life Orb or something like that. And then for a fourth slot, you can run either your Shadow Ball or Zen Headbutt. Zen Headbutt, of course, just for general physical stab, especially if you're going to be going V-Create and Bolt Strike. You're going to want to go ahead and stay on that physical side more often if you want to. Shadow Ball, yes, will be giving you the super effective coverage for Chandelure if you really want to opt to go that route, because I do believe Chandelure is the best check to Victini. I don't really know if it's a switch-in necessarily, unless you are just a million % expecting the V-Create. You might be able to go pretty defensive with like Eye Pop Out, and then you might actually be able to take 2 Bolt Strikes pretty well and everything, or like a Bolt Strike into the potential Shadow Ball. So that's something you got to watch out for. But overall, Chandelure is definitely an easy revenge or like swap in after for Victini if you need to do that. But I'm not so sure how well it would be strong defensively. Also for Envy's team, I see Scarf Heracross doing great cleanup potential. You could also have the option of running Bandage just for a wall break. Either way, with the amazing attack stat I heard it has, and it's pretty solid speed tier being just above that Chandelure and everything. It can definitely put in plenty of work versus the Cupchoo's team. It's just really difficult for Elliott, for his bulk, to deal with the heavy offense that Envy and the Chimchargers have. So overall, I do feel like the matchup is in Envy's favor, and Envy has been playing very well this season overall. So I had to go in favor of the San Diego Chimchargers, and actually everyone else in the league of the analysts and you guys at home actually voted in favor of the San Diego Chimchargers as well. Do you have anything to add on to that, CJ?
No, not really. Yeah, it's nothing against Elliott, but Envy's been a top 3 coach this season, so I don't expect him to get taken down here. There could be some tricks thrown in, like Scolipede being a nuisance or speed passing. It's always potential for that, or Ninetales setting up Veil and giving a setup opportunity to something else, but I'm just picking Envy. In the next matchup, we have 6-foot Hacks, aka Leo, and his Durham Dragons going up against Fate Attacks, aka Christian, and his Atlanta Umbreons. So this is looking like a very good matchup for many of Leo's top-tier Pokemon. Something like Mega Lopunny has very little counterplay. You just run Return, High Jump Kick, and then the last 2 slots you can kind of put whatever you want. Like Ice Punch and Fire Punch seem kind of natural, because Fire Punch hits 2 Pokemon 4 times super effectively. Ice Punch does the same. But you could potentially forego one of those. Like maybe you drop the Fire Punch and just stick with High Jump Kick to hit Durant in the Fortress, and then you go with something like Retaliate or some other sort of high power normal type move in that slot. It's just it's so good just because there is no really good like fighting resist on the team for Christian. Like I said, the top tier threat's looking very good this game. I think this is probably the best Tailglow Manaphy matchup I've seen all season. The only water resist on the team is that Lantern. You can easily run Energy Ball coverage for that. And those are the only 2 moves you really need. Maybe it'd be nice to run Ice Beam, but it's not needed. I guess Dragonite, you want to have that for that. But if you wanted to just rely on the high base power of like Surf and the natural special attack of Manaphy, you could opt for a Z Rain set. And then that you know get the extra 1.5 times power boost from the Rain would be nice for hitting that Dragonite just a little bit harder. My sleeper option for this matchup is actually going to be a Sunny Day Moltres, like Z Sunny Day, with Fire Blast, Solar Beam, and HP Ice. So the fire resists are very few and far between. Solar Beam gives you the option to hit things like Lantern and Regirock with super effective damage, and then HP Ice is there for the 2 dragons, the Flygon and the Dragonite. So I think that could be very potent if Leo decides to break that out. The other really scary setup set, I would say, is Reuniclus with both Acid Armor and Calm Mind, because there is no Dark type on Christian's team. So I think he could pretty easily run Psy Shock, Recover, plus those 2 setup moves. It sort of forces the Durant to come, because Durant is kind of the only way to hit that Reuniclus with any good chunk of damage. But again, if those Acid Armors get up too soon, the Durant is going to be too little too late. Other ways to stop their Reuniclus are going to be Taunt or Encore on the Gardevoir. I think that'll be likely to come out. I don't think it's all bad for Christian. Gardevoir is still hard to switch into, although it is forced to run Moonblast in this matchup instead of Hyper Voice, just on that off chance that the Como-O is soundproof. I suppose you could just bank on hitting it with the Psychic type move instead of hitting it with the Fairy type move, but you do sacrifice the 4 times super effective option for only Psychic's 2x super effective. So like Como-O is going to be taking a super effective hit from Gardevoir, but it's very bulky. It could potentially live like one Psychic type move, whereas there's almost no chance it could live any Fairy type move. The fact also that it's forced to run Moonblast instead of Hyper Voice means it's just a little bit easier for things like Alolan Muck and Steelix to check it. The only other thing that I think is potentially scary is, of course, the Double Dragon. Potentially, either of those mons setting up could be problematic. I think Fairy Silvally will have to come to be a check to those 2 threats. So, all that analysis out of the way, I'm going to be going in favor of a 6-foot Hax and the Durham Dragons in this game. It's looking like a clean sweep for the Dragons amongst our analysts and fans. Ben, do you have any thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I definitely had to go in favor of Leo, and 100% knowing Leo, when it comes down to this match, yes, he's going to be abusing Mega Lopunny and Reuniclus. I feel like that's going to be strong, but I definitely see him bringing Tauros and going in with Tauros. He'll bring a mixed with, I believe Tauros gets Ice Beam, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Okay, and I know it gets like a Flamethrower and Fire Blast, so you have that for like Durant and stuff if you really wanted to in the Fortress. You have Ice Beam for those dragons, and then you just run like the Body Slam or Return or whatever's better on it. In all honesty, I don't know. To hit Gardevoir or Meloetta, etc. And then I guess like Earthquake or something, just random to hit Regirock if you really wanted all the coverage in the world. But yeah, with the perfect 110 speed to like immediately outspeed Durant, and then to have something else for like flying on Entei. He could throw a Scarf on that Tauros if you really wanted to, or in general just a Life Orb hit's very strong for sure. But Leo's such a big fan of Tauros that I definitely see it coming this week and benefiting him. But I would really want to see Durant put in work this week, almost every week, and put in a decent amount of work, and I just want to see Christian use it pretty well. So hopefully we can see that. For the next match, we have the Melbourne Rotoms, coached by Cybertron, going up against the Florida Gators, coached by its Gator. For this matchup, I look at Mega Heracross, and I look at no switch-ins. Close combat, pin missile, poison jab, and then like potential swords dance or substitute is looking extremely solid for Gator. Technically, the only real thing you might want to switch in is Aromatisse, and even then, Poison Jab's still going to be doing plenty, and you're going to you'll take a Moonblast decently well. I think it might be doing like 65, 75%, somewhere around there, because overall Mega Hero can be pretty bulky. You do need a decent amount of speed in this matchup. It's actually, no, you don't really need much speed, because majority of the Pokemon that are slower than you are going to be run extremely bulky. So you can go a really bulky offensive Mega Heracross. It's going to benefit you greatly. Overall, the Rotoms team always has struggled with Fighting Stab, I feel like, so they just have to be aware of that in the long run. I definitely see, for the same reasons, Aurora being used pretty well this match. Overall, the electric plus fighting coverage just destroys, and you can easily run like bulk up on Zorora, just potentially, literally just to win with it. I feel like that has strong potential. So we do have 2 fast mons in like the Acelgor and the Zorora, so maybe you bring like a Specs Acelgor just to help you as much versus the Zorora as you can. So that's something you have to be aware of. There's limited checks to Mamoswine, however. Technically Pyukamuka is the best, but I still don't think Pyukamuka is a great mon, so I just need to see it like be used well, and I know Gator's a fan of it, so you'd be able to use it versus the Mamoswine if he needs to. But one other thing that Gator's done that we might actually see this game is Z-Peck on Mamoswine for the Mega Heracross. I would love to see that. I feel like that'd be doing if that catches Gator, I'd lose my mind, because he's so aware of it, but it'd be extremely funny if he were to actually do that in the matchup. But Kartana is also looking pretty good in this match, especially late game. Can definitely grab those Beast Boosts and just potentially just win. You do have to be aware of Zorora and Frostlass, however. Zorora, of course, can run like the close combat or whatnot. Can easily run like mixed with HP if it really wants to. And then Frostlass, of course, just with a decent special attack stat that outspeeds, is able to deal with it. Because you don't want to run Scarf on Cortana, you want to be able to use the move pool that it has and the coverage, and really just abuse those attack boosts and be able to break apart the team. Because Gator does love running some of his Pokemon pretty bulky majority of the time, so you have to make sure you're picking up the KOs even if the calc says that you should be grabbing the KO. So you just have to be well aware of that. But overall, just decided to go in favor of the Florida Gators. Kind of had to. It's really hard to vote against him. Every analyst decided to go in favor with him as well, except Chris Cobain actually going with Cybertron this week in the Melbourne Rotoms, while y'all at home decided to vote in favor of the Florida Gators as well. CJ, you want to add anything to my exceptional analysis?
Yo, that Z-Pack set is actually the most Flames things I've ever heard in my entire
Yeah, they did it on a Showdown Live.
Yeah, to an offensive Mega Heracross that does 145% minimum from an Adamant Mamoswine. That's bonkers. No, I don't have too much to add. Yeah, I agree that the Heracross is very potent here, very limited counterplay. Heatran is going to be kind of forced to deal with the Kartana, I feel. But other than that, I think that Gator has the offensive advantage here. I'm going to be going in favor of him as well. The next game has the Adelaide Honchcrows and Bill Standish going up against the Maryland Torterrapins and Under the Radar, aka Kelly. So when I look at squads that have Primarina on them, I'm most of the time looking at like the choice spec sets and how well they can wall break. That's not really going to work that well versus Kelly's team because most of his team is relatively fast and is going to be able to hit Primarina before the Primarina can hit them. However, if you put a Scarf onto that Primarina, I think it looks very scary. Moonblast has very limited responses on Kelly's side. Basically, like a Fat Milotic is going to be the only thing that really can switch in. And it does get, like, if it's at like 75% or lower, it is going to get 2-hit KO'd. And I think it's going to be pretty easy to get that chip damage onto Milotic. Milotic is going to be wanting to switch in on the Lando Incarnate, on the Aerodactyl, on the Scizor, just because it doesn't mind the moves from those Pokemon all too much, and it can throw off Scalds, which are very threatening, you know, doing super effective damage to Lando and Arrow, while threatening the Scald Burn on the Scizor. Like the only resist, quote unquote, is like Darmanitan, but Darmanitan gets 2-hit KO'd by Moonblast after Stealth Rocks, and preserving the Darmanitan is going to be too important for threatening that Scizor. Like the Mega Scizor can be a little bit of a problem in this matchup, I think. Like besides like Milotic and Zygarde, you know, two mons that can probably take a hit. I think that the Bullet Punch option is definitely going to be annoying. I think that the Mega Sableye definitely comes as an Necrozma check. On paper, you just look at the coverage of Shadow Ball and Dazzling Gleam, and you'd think that it would be a good matchup for it, but the fact that there's two mons that are packing fairy typing to do super effective stab to that, I think discourages the Calm Mind option with Shadow Ball and Dazzling Gleam. So I'd rather expect like a utility set with some sort of status move, Will-O-Wisp or Toxic, and then if he still wants it to be like a good Necrozma check, I'd probably just put Psych Up in the last slot. So that way, if Necrozma gets up to like +3 or +4, you can copy its boosts immediately with Psych Up and not have to worry about catching up with something like Calm Mind. Zygarde matchup is pretty good. You know, Zygarde's matchup is very frequently good in these games. Prankster Whimsicott with Encore is definitely a problem. Like Zygarde does get Sludge Wave as a potential way to hit Whimsicott, but it's not going to be able to do that if it's Encored. You can circumvent that by potentially using a Z move. Encore doesn't work too well with Z moves, or alternatively, you can run Mental Herb. So it's kind of being like a lure for Whimsicott in a way. And if you get that out of the way, there's just really no way to deal with 1,000 arrows spam. Maybe you want to run like a HP Fire just to be safe versus Mega Scizor or something like that. Like I've seen fat Mega Scizors be able to tank ground type moves from Zygardes. And Scizor does get Curse, if I'm not mistaken. So it'd be kind of cheeky to see like Curse Mega Scizor boost alongside a Mega Zygarde. Sorry, not Mega Zygarde, regular Zygarde. So yeah, the HP Fire there just might be nice. So yeah, overall I think Zygarde with some kind of cute tech options would be pretty good. For the picks, I'm definitely going in favor of Kelly, just because he's got a really nice resume so far in WBE, and Bill is just getting his feet wet in the WBE this season. We'll see how he does with his team now that he's got all of his transactions, now that he's got the Electivire, the Articuno, and the Whimsicott. But there's actually a couple coaches or a couple analysts who have good faith in Bill. You've got Aaron, Dr. Slacking, and Jacob is always going in favor of him. But it sounds like you and I are on the same page on this one, Ben. We're both going in favor of Kelly.
Yep, I had to go with my boy Kelly. I just like his team more. Like I've said before, I'm not a fan of this team. And even after the FAs, I only like it a little bit more because I am a fan of Whimsicott. But apart from that, I wish he would have changed a few more things. And Kelly's just been performing well throughout the season. And it's been kind of tough out of the gate for Bill as he faced MV last week. And now he has to deal with Kelly. So that's pretty unfortunate.
That's rough.
All right, for the next match, we have the New York Marauders, coached by Mr. Talent, going up against the Tennessee Trubbish and definitely I Am. For this matchup, I think it's overall pretty difficult for the Marauders. I feel like their threats are easily revenged by both Mega Beetle and Greninja, which is majority of the time the plan for the Tennessee Trubbish because they really like to abuse that speed tier and everything. Choice Specs, Houndoom, and Latias I feel like are going to be kind of the best offense. Choice Specs, Houndoom is actually probably going to be a little bit slept on. Yes, there's like a pretty decent check in Emboar, and you can go hard Greninja, but you don't want to take Greninja to take a lot, especially if it's coming in on hazards. So overall, you're clicking like Choice Specs, Fire Blast, or Dark Pulse and doing a lot of damage overall to the Tennessee Trubbish. And I feel like that's going to be pretty nice. And it's going to be a little slept on. I definitely don't think it's going to be ready for it because you don't really see a Houndoom in general unless it's Mega in the Sun. So that's something that I feel like it's going to be slept on overall. Ambipom I feel like is going to be pretty important with Fake Out overall to deal with those frail speedy Revengers and Mega B and Greninja. Also, you can have the knockoff to hit the Celesteela and Cofagrigus because it's going to be important to both scout their item and just get rid of it in general, because really Ambipom's not going to be doing anything else to them apart from getting rid of their item. You're just going to want to do that, then you turn out. So you can keep that Fake Out potential for the rest of the Pokemon that you have to face. And back to that Greninja and Mega B, they do extremely well, like I mentioned before, getting amazing pivot and just overall strong revenge killers. But I would also like to see potential in like an offensive Celesteela once again with Autotomize, Heavy Slam, EQ, and Air Slash with the attack boosting nature, of course. It's just looking pretty solid right there because of course you just spam Heavy Slam versus majority of the roster, and then you have the Earthquake for the Empoleon and the Stunfisk, and then Air Slash overall just do the most damage to the Buzzwole, and potentially like a really defensive Gourgeist I guess you could use that for as well. It's just something that can easily like clean up late game I feel like, especially if you keep Celesteela in the back the entire time and Mr. Talent's not able to scout whether it is a defensive or offensive Celesteela, which is always important to watch out for in games because Celesteela is just so good in Draft League for playing either card. So when it came down to it, I decided to vote for the New York Marauders still based off of how they've done as a team for the rest of the season, even though I do feel like the matchup's a little bit difficult. But every analyst and even y'all at home decided to vote in favor of the New York Marauders as well, being a clean sweep, and Dr. Slacking as using his lock-in as well for Mr. Talent this week. Is there anything you want to add to this game, CJ?
No, not really. I like the call out for the Houndoom just because even though it does have a few like typing resistances, like you mentioned, those Pokemon don't want to switch in on the Houndoom. Maybe you make it Life Orb and you put Sucker Punch on it as well. That just makes it like a nice cheeky option for hitting Beedrill, thinking that it can potentially revenge kill the Houndoom. Yeah, I like Drew's resume in this season. You know, he's got a better record versus Tyler, who's just been struggling. In the next game, we have the Miami Dolphins, coached by Kyle A., going up against the Pittsburgh Piratas and Old Man Tup. It's kind of funny. So, like, these two teams are actually some of the hotter teams in WBE right now. Like, you wouldn't know that just by looking at their records. But Kyle's now won 2 in a row, and I think, like, 3 of the last 4 Tup has won, or 3 of the last 5. So it's pretty funny that these guys are kind of on tears, you know, in their own ways. I think that there's a couple of decent rain responses from Tup. You know, the fact that he has the Tyranitar, of course, to reset the weather is very nice. Roserade, I think, deals pretty well with most weather options in this matchup here. It is true that, like, Victory Bell can pack Weather Ball to hit that thing for super effective damage in the sun. But Roserade just has such a big special defense stat that it can probably still take one hit and then throw off like an extra sensory or something. And that would be a really good option for hitting that victory bell. There's just some other bulky mons that are potentially annoying, like Charizard X, Hariyama, Klefki. They're all kind of bulky and annoying in general. I think the best win con option for Kyle would be to go with a Dragon Dance Kingdra. I like that because he can then throw off a powerful Dragon-type move on the physical side versus that Roserade, which I mentioned probably will be run Spadef in order to deal with the Rain Sweepers. So that might catch him off guard. Also running like physical Dragon Stab is nice for like hitting Charizard as hard as possible, Rotom, things like that. There's one good option on top side that I'd like to point out. I really like Trick Room Musharna because Psychic Spam is pretty good. Cresselia being kind of the only Pokemon that wants to take any sort of Psychic type move. But you could obviously just run Shadow Ball for that. And Cresselia in general is just kind of pressured. It's really going to be the main response to Mega Charizard X because there's not much else. Like Diancie is there, but Diancie doesn't really want to take Earthquakes. Volcanion is there, but it's kind of the same thing. And Volcanion doesn't want to take the Dragon-type moves anyway. I think it's just a little bit safer to rely on the Cresselia, I would say. So the Trick Room Musharna, I think if you can pressure the Cresselia, is looking really nice. And it's just like a good way to mitigate the weather strategies. It's a guaranteed way to have something to outspeed Kingdra and Victory Bell. So it was a really tough time for me to pick this matchup. I actually went back and forth a couple times, but I settled on the Miami Dawn fans and Kyle A. It's looking pretty split, actually. I think it's 6-5 in favor of Kyle A in this matchup, but it seems like a lot of people had the same sort of back and forth that I did. Looks like you also settled on Kyle A over there, Ben.
I just had to go with Kyle because I feel like his Rain's going to be pretty important this week, mainly crippling like the Mega Charizard X and overall being very strong with Kingdra. I feel like Kingdra's just going to put in plenty of work overall. You do have to respect, of course, the weather change and Tyranitar and everything. But based off the momentum Kyle has, and even though, like you mentioned, Tup has been doing strong as well lately, I feel like Kyle will be able to pull it through. For the next match, we have the Free State Torcats, coached by Duncan Can't Die, going up against the LA Spice and K-Cray. For this match, I really see a Mimikyu putting in the largest amount of work. It's easily probably the best Pokemon in this matchup, I feel like. With the free setup again, of course, and its ability to disguise, is just going to benefit very well with that SD and just abusing its stabs. Of course, having Shadow Sneak is very beneficial for like some of the things that outspeed it and want to be, of course, a revenge killer, like potential Jirachi and Blacephalon. Both weak, of course, to the Ghost Stab towards Shadow Sneak. It's going to be very beneficial to outspeed and be able to KO those Pokemon. Mega Titor is going to be doing very well in this matchup versus the Sunmons on K-Cray's team, just coming in and getting rid of the Sun, as well as just being a general check to them. Like Ninetales and Mega Houndoom are really doing that much, unless, of course, they're packing like Hidden Power fighting, then they'll be doing a decent amount of damage, of course, but that's just about it. And it also does pretty heavy damage, and it can also eat a hit from Starmie to where it can potentially pursue trap the Starmie and just not deal with that thing anymore, which would be pretty beneficial because Starmie is always a threat. It can always do a great amount of damage, especially if you're not bringing Sun this week. You can spam water type moves more often. I also see Porygon 2 being pretty difficult to break this week, in all honesty. You might want to bring an offensive Hitmontop, but then Hitmontop's countered by Crobat pretty easily, and then Crobat just gets off either a free U-turn or a free Toxic versus the Free State Torcats, which is pretty annoying when it comes down to their team. So I definitely feel like the P2 is going to be a little bit more hard to deal with. If you're able to get off a Toxic or something, that's probably the best case scenario, because I'm not really expecting like an Aromatherapy Lilligant to come or anything of the sort, so that's probably going to be your best way of just wearing that thing down over time, or at least forcing it to switch out and then capitalizing on whatever K-Cray decides to bring in to prevent the Toxic from racking up over time. But when it came down to it this week, I decided to go with the Free State Torcats and Duncan Can't Die. Majority of the analysts also agreeing with me here, with the two analysts only in favor of K being Jacob and JB Westside. And for you guys at home, you decided to vote in favor of Duncan and the Free State Torcats as well. CJ, is there anything you'd like to tell me about why you picked Duncan this week?
It's funny that you brought up the offensive Hitmon top. I think actually this might be too crazy, but like a triple priority technician Hitmon top actually looks really nice. You can run Sucker for Starmie, Mach Punch for Houndoom, and Bullet Punch for Mimikyu. And then to deal with Magnezone in P2, you run Close Combat in the final slot. Could be kind of fun to see. Yeah, I liked what you pointed out about like Mimikyu and stuff like that. But basically, Duncan has just had a little bit more success so far this season. And that was the main thing that led me to pick him in this game. But I think that overall, K still has a very underrated roster, so anything could happen in this one. In the next game, we've got the Milwaukee B and Wolfie Glick going up against the South Texas Sableyes and their coach in Vivid Color. So this is one of the weaker overall Hawlucha matchups this season that I've seen. Both Weezing and Duosion are really nice checks. They're both very, very physically bulky and aren't going to take too much damage from Hawlucha. Duosion being able to, of course, threaten it with super effective stab. And Weezing, even though it can't do quite as much damage right off the bat, does have the option to pack Haze and to remove any boosts that it has. If I were Vivid, I would probably run some sort of U-turn set on Hawlucha and not run like Grassy Seed. Because then he can take advantage of Weezing and Duosion by going into something like Mew, potentially. Mew, with like sub 3 attacks, looks pretty nice. Like he'll kind of have to pick and choose what he wants. Definitely you want Psychic. T-Bolt for the Mandibuzz would be nice. Aura Sphere for Excadrill would be nice. But then maybe you also want like Shadow Ball for Duosion. So maybe you can't run all four of those moves, but I think that that's just a nice way to sort of get momentum in this game. If he doesn't want to go with like the physical options, I think like a physically offensive option with like Sucker Punch would be really nice, because Sucker Punch is going to be able to do super effective damage, of course, to that Gengar and outspeed it, and it's going to be able to do a decent chunk of damage to like Tornadus T as well. Excadrill still looks really scary even with the grassy terrain, because Excadrill could just go with Drill Run instead of Earthquake, and it still does pretty good damage. It needs certain Pokemon weakened, like Poliwrath being weakened would be really nice. He probably needs a little bit of chip on the Aggron before the Excadrill can really finish the game, but I think Blastoise is really good at dealing with those Pokemon. Another annoying one would be Mew, just because Mew is generally bulky enough to take like almost one of anything. And yeah, I think Blastoise can also deal with that Pokemon. Hawlucha can revenge kill with Grassy Seed, but as I mentioned, I don't think that Grassy Seed Hawlucha is like the best option here because of the presence of Weezing and Duosion. I think Wolfie's best overall option, even besides the Excadrill, is offensive Torrent T. Just because the flying resists are so limited on Vivid's side, it's basically just the Aggron. So you can easily hit that up with Superpower or Focus Blast. You can even pop Z-Move on it to do like the most amount of damage. And you don't even need to do that. Like Aggron's pretty pressured by things like Gigalith, Golem, and even Duosion. So if you can use those Pokemon to get chip damage throughout the match on the Aggron, then you can be more comfortable going with like Z Hurricane for Supersonic Sky Strike to wear the whole team down. The only thing that's potentially stopping a Tornadus T like that is Ice Shard on Sneasel if it's packing like Life Orb or Choice Band. I feel bad going against Vivid because he's been quite a sleeper this season. He's just got a little bit unfortunate this week and last week, running into two of the top coaches in his division, being A-Drive and Wolfie. But yeah, I am going to be going in favor of Wolfie here. And it looks like all but two folks are going to be going the same. We've got Dr. Slacking and Sock picking the South Texas Sableyes. Looks like you like Wolfie in this match too, Ben.
I do like Wolfie in the matchup because I am in love with Gengar, and I feel like Gengar is a pretty solid matchup in this match as well. You do have to be aware of like the Sneasel, of course, wanting to just pursue trap you in general. I feel like Sneasel's actually going to be an important bring in this match if they do have to bring it with like Pursuit, Knockoff, and then either Icicle Crush or Ice Shard. I feel like that priority might be a little bit better. And then like Low Kick overall for like the Excadrill and the Gigalith, I feel like be pretty important. So both Sneasel and Gengar I definitely feel like would be potential great add-ons for both teams. I was pulling for Vivid last week to try to get the upset versus Dan, even though I voted for Dan, I believe, last week. But still voting for Vivid. Was pulling for Vivid because he's a good friend, but I definitely feel like Wolfie still has it this week. In the next match, we have the Pittsburgh Pichus, coached by Nexus, going against the Newcastle Needle Kings and Patters. In this matchup, I definitely see a potential Calm Mind Mega Metacham, which I would love to see. Of course, it would probably just run Calm Mind, Recover, and then Psyshock Shadow Ball. I feel like that'd be probably the best potential for it this week if it does come. However, just a completely offensive Mega Medi is still fine because you do get the Ice Punch coverage for the defensive Xatu that might want to switch in. However, like a pretty bulky Delphox would probably still be annoying. You could probably run something like Return and still definitely 2-hit KO that Delphox, so it's definitely nothing you have to worry about. So offensive is definitely still probably the most ideal when it comes down to Metacham because it can definitely still break apart the rest of the team. But I would just like to see a Calm Mind come out of nowhere and just do work. That's always fun to see on a Mega Metacham, and it doesn't happen way too often. Coco, of course, just because Coco things and does plenty of work in its electric terrain. This is a great job of weakening the team in general, especially weakening it for Terrakion, because Terrakion really does benefit Pokemon such as like Swampert, Tangrowth, Gudra, things like that being slightly weakened already, so you can get the 2-hit KO on it whenever you click. Mainly just close combat spam works best versus his team, I'd say, because your only resist is Zapdos and Clefairy, and you have immunity in Doublade. But I'm not counting Clefairy, so you have an immunity and a resist, and then Zapdos just weak to Stone Edge. So it doesn't matter in the long run. So Terrakion and Coco, which Patters has been doing pretty well with for the entire season, is definitely going to be an important power duo for this week as well. I would like to see a potential Alolan Exeggutor putting in some work and catching off guard. It might benefit most from like a Trick Room. But I can definitely see, just Draco Meteor and then like either Leaf Storm or Woodhammer and then any other like just fill-in moves. I just feel like it could definitely catch him off guard and at least help versus most things except for like Zapdos. And Gudra could definitely take a hit if he definitely runs like Assault Vest or something of the sort if you don't run all physical. But it's just something I would like to see because I feel like it does like have an average matchup compared to how I don't think Alolan Exeggutor is typically the best, of course. So I'm just trying to catch some fun sets this week, and I feel like Alolan Exeggutor would definitely be able to put a smile on everyone's face. But when it came down to it, I had to go in favor of the Newcastle Needle Kings and Patters, because he's just been overall doing well in the season, I feel like. And the only ones that disagree with me are Aaron2420 going in favor of the Pichus, as well as you guys at home voting in favor of Nexus and the Pittsburgh Pichus. CJ, you want to tell me why you opted to go with Patters this week?
Yeah, the matchup just looks really good overall. Like, the Terrakion matchup here is actually bonkers. Doublade probably stands out as the most obvious response to that, but you can pack Earthquake to hit it. So, like, Z Earthquake with Swords Dance and then Stabs is probably going to be the way to go. A sleeper option for checking the Terrakion is actually Physically Defensive Mega Metacham. Shout out to Leo for using that versus me in a previous league. So just use, like, Recover, Drain Punch, and Bullet Punch. And there's very little that Terrakion can actually do to break that sort of Metacham. But yeah, just the fact that like the speed tiers are so funky for Nexus means that Pokemon like Terrakion, Pokemon like Delphox are going to have a very fun time here. So I like Patters overall.
Ooh, a defensive Mega Metacham, that's actually crazy. Imagine getting outplayed by Leo. Couldn't be me.
It's never happened to me before, I swear. All right, let's move on to the next game. This is going to be a fun one between the Rochester Rhydons, coached by Iron Boffin, and the Bronze Bearticks, coached by PokeAim MD. I think the best threat on Joey's side is going to be the Comfey, because there's just pretty limited response to Fairy Spam in general on Boffin's team. It's basically just Metagross, and being able to resist that and then throw off potentially Bullet Punch versus it. I think maybe a cool option would be to run U-Turn on the Comfey and then trap the Metagross with like Crocodile or Gothitelle. And then that means that Comfey pretty much just gets free Dazzling Gleams or Draining Kiss for the rest of the game. You also have Bronzong, which is a pretty decent response to Metagross, and can pack something like Shadow Ball to hit it super effectively. Overall, though, like besides that, I think that Boff has pretty good responses to the rest of Joey's main threats. Gallade is checked relatively hard by Spiritomb. Yes, you could pack like Toxic or Will-O-Wisp for Spiritomb, but otherwise Gallade just doesn't have an option to hit it very hard. Altaria is a very good response for Volcarona. Breloom can be scary, but as long as it's not Scarf, Weavile can out-prioritize it with Ice Shard. So I think there's a couple of ways to deal with Joey's threats otherwise, besides that Comfy. Joey has pretty responses for a lot of Boffin's biggest threats. I'm always gravitating towards Suicune when I analyze Boffin's matchups. I think Suicune here isn't that great. Like, it's good, but I think there's enough responses on Joey's team that it's not going to be a huge deal. Like Breloom being able to run powerful Bullet Seed moves. It's a high PP move, so it can't get PP stalled that easily. It can deal damage through Substitute. I think that's really nice. He could even run Toxic Orb on that Breloom because that will prevent him from getting burned by Scald. And then if he wants to have like a sub protect sort of Suicune, you're giving recovery to that Breloom the whole time, so it's not actually worth it to do sub protect. And then the fact that he has lots of Pokemon with Taunt, he has Toxapex, which can easily throw off Haze if he wants to bring a Calm Mind variant. I don't think Suicune's going to be a very major issue. There's always things like Weavile that could be a big offensive threat. Ice Shard, I mentioned, is being very important for dealing with the Breloom. Probably wants Low Kick to do some damage to Piloswine. And then just like Icicle Crash and Knockoff, all pretty decent in the matchup here. Gallade could be a really cheeky set and run Vacuum Wave to try and hit 4 times super effectively on that Weavile. But yeah, overall, I just like Joey in this game because he's undefeated, frankly. I'm not going to be forced to pick against Joey until he loses. And in terms of the rest of the analysts and the fans, it is going strongly in favor of Joey as well, with just Sock picking in favor of Iron Boffin. Looks like Sock is actually going against the grain quite a bit this week, but you are not going against the grain. You are going to be picking the Prosperity, it seems, Ben.
Yeah, no, I'm not as bold as Sock. I definitely have to go in favor of Joey this week. Like, majority of weeks, I will go in favor of Joey, no matter who he faces, it seems. Because he's just been doing so well this season. And I love Boff to death, and I really do love his team. Like, I still like every part of it. But Joey just overall has so much control of the season, and the momentum he's been carrying compared to Boff is just a little bit bigger. So I had to go in favor of Joey. And for my last match this week, we have the Minnesota Vikavolt, coached by Dan, aka A-Drive, going up against the Nuzleafs and Automatic. So Lazo, I feel like, can just overall prove to be a big problem if you deal with the Pokemon that can outspeed it, such as the Mega Manectric and the Talonflame, mainly being strong Avengers. And of course, you do have the Accelerock in the Lycanroc that you have to be aware of. But most likely we're going to see a Rindo Berry on the Gastrodon to help deal with this Hidden Power Grass that the Salazzle is most likely going to be carrying, because the best set for this week is the standard Nasty Plot, Stabs, and Sludge Wave, and Flamethrower / Fire Blast. Most likely Flamethrower for this matchup. And then Hidden Power Grass in order to deal with the Gastrodon. But Dan typically brings a Rindo Berry on his Gastrodon on anyways, so it's going to be pretty difficult for him to break that in the first case. So it's pretty situational for Salazzle to sweep, but if it's under the perfect conditions, I feel like it's just really hard for Dan to work around that. His defensive core kind of just gets blown back by it in general. But for Kyurem Black, I see an Ice C, like physical Kyurem IC just absolutely claiming a kill and doing a lot of work in general. However, if you want to go the route of like Hail Z Kyurem Black, I definitely see that doing a lot of great cleanup work at the end game. Getting outspeeds on some of those threats such as Latios and Salazzle would be very key, and honestly still has a great option of sweeping in the late game. But I feel like overall, like a very strong offensive physical IC, Kyurem Black will be doing the best, because of course you can even of course two-shot with the Iron Head on the Clefable, which would be pretty nice. On auto side, I would like to see a Trick Room like Mega Camera up this week. I feel like it can actually put in a decent amount of work. Once again, you're one-on-one like HP Grass on a deal with the Gastro, so as long as you're running a lot of like HP Grass or general grass coverage, you're going to be able to break that Rindo on the Gastrodon pretty easily in this matchup, because it's pressured pretty well, and then just later on another Pokemon clicks like HP Grass or something of the sort, and you're able to get that Gastrodon out of the way and potentially just sweep if Dan doesn't have more checks than just a single Berry Gastrodon. So you have to be aware of that going into this matchup. So I definitely had to go in favor of the Minnesota Vikavolt and Dan, who's been performing a lot better than Automatic so far than when Auto picked up the team. I actually locked in Dan this week, and every analyst is going in favor of the Minnesota Vikavolt except for one being, I believe it's Dr. Slacking this week. So, and you guys at home also decided to vote in favor of the Minnesota Vikavolt. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, CJ?
Not really. The Kiram set that you highlighted is definitely looking good. Physical, like fully physical, is going to be nice. So you can run that max power electric coverage for physically defensive Slowbro, which is probably going to be the way to deal with Kiram Black. Yeah, Dan is doing really well with his team this season. He obviously is very comfortable with it. The core of Florges plus Skarmory plus Gastrodon is just, it's so much in his wheelhouse. Like, he just knows exactly how to pivot with those mons. I think he's going to take this game. In our last game of the week, we're going to be analyzing the New Orleans Pelipers, coached by Pokemon, aka John, and his opponent is going to be the Milwaukee Saucebugs, coached by Magnitude, aka Steve. So, I do think that Mega Swampert is looking very threatening this game. Basically, with its stabs plus Ice Punch, it can one-shot everything. Basically, the only response for that is going to be that Vaporeon. It's the only Pokemon that can take a Earthquake. It takes like 35 or 38% minimum from Jolly Swampert if it's full Fizz Def. I think that Vaporeon is a little pressured by some of the other Pokemon, like the other Rain Sweepers and Scizor. So if you can use those Pokemon to chip it down to maybe like 60% or so, get up rocks, and then set up like Power Up Punch with the Swampert at some point, you're going to be putting that Vaporeon in guaranteed range of a +1 EQ. If that's making John too uncomfortable, maybe you bust out the classic Focus Sash Alakazam to guaranteed KO it with Energy Ball and just not have to worry about trying to find a switch in for it. I definitely expect the regular Scizor to be coming to deal with Mega Diancie, because Rock Polish is looking really scary. Otherwise, there's just not a lot of good switch-ins to the dual stabs there. Also beware of potential Aqua Jet on Armaldo as a decent option for revenge killing the Diancie. Armaldo's got a pretty decent base attack stat. I believe it's 125. If you put that thing in Rain and give it the Rain boost on that Aqua Jet, it could probably one-shot the Diancie. For John, probably the biggest threat besides, like, Diancie with the Scizor removed is going to be something like Scarf Moxie Salamence, because Steve does not have a single fairy type on his team. So if he can get that Scizor weakened or potentially removed, and if he makes the mistake of running Adamant Swampert instead of Jolly, Adamant would not outspeed a Scarf Mence in the rain, but Jolly would. Then I think that Scarf Outrage on a Moxie Salamence just wins. I think that'd probably be the best option if I were in John's shoes. I am going to be picking the Pelipers to win this game. All of the analysts and fans are also going to be picking John. John doing quite well this season, picking up a couple of key wins like over A-Drive and things like that. Whereas Steve, unfortunately, is actually has the exact opposite record of John. John being 7-3, Steve being 3-7. Anything you want to add? I know you've sometimes got that insider info from John's front office.
I mean, I do have a little bit of information, but I don't believe I'm legally obligated to share it. So I'm going to keep that to myself and just have to say I'm going to have to stick with my boy John this week. Always been proud of how well he's been, more adapting to this team and building better and just playing overall with his team. So it's just going to be hard to pick against John for the remainder of the season for me.
All right, my friends, that's going to wrap things up for our Week 11 analysis of the WBE. Lots of great matchups, as you guys heard. Hope you guys are looking forward to checking it out. I'm going to pitch things to Ben, so wrap things up and pitch a couple of plugs, and we'll be signing off right after that. So, Ben, take it away.
What's up, everybody? It's Ben back with your weekly plugs. Remember to check out every coach down in the description. Give them all the love that they deserve. Check out their battles, check out their team builders, check out everything else they put on their channel, because they always provide the hardest of work for their lovely viewers, being you people. So look forward to all the amazing battles that we talked about this week, and the previous ones that are still slightly delayed that will be coming up for week 10. So look forward to that. Of course, if you really love the WB and everything about it, make sure to buy a shirt down below as well. Get one of your favorite team or just a WB logo in general. I saw my boy Mewtwo YouTube fan Nate was wearing one of his New York Noibat shirts while he was at Worlds. So you can get something like that and look as strong as my boy Nate did, flexing in that tank top. Also, just make sure to check out all the Twitters. We also have the analysts down below, like CJ and I, if you wanted to show us some more extra love outside this video in the comment section. We'd really appreciate it. And lastly, of course, there is the Pixelmon servers. Like always, that way we would really appreciate y'all to check out, because I'll keep saying it, Minecraft is on the rise and once again is taking over. So you might as well be part of the Cool Kid Club and play some Pixelmon today. That sounded like a perfect plug right there. But
yeah, for sure.
In the end, I'm kind of getting a professional tease at this point, so what can I say? But that's going to be it from us this week, guys. Deuces.
Goodbye, everybody. See ya.